Hello. This is my Module 6 assignment, Empowering Later. I will just apologize in advance. I currently have COVID, and so I am going to do my best to make it through this presentation without coughing or losing my breath, so bear with me. All right, the purpose of my presentation. Um, Throughout it, I will be pointing out two main takeaways from the resources that have been provided. I'll then discuss how these takeaways apply to my district, which is USD 265, and then also how it applies to our staff and our students. So, from our first resource, the two main takeaways from this article were a shift in the role of teachers and support for teachers. When the pandemic hit, districts across the nation were scrambling in order to figure out how to ensure that learning continued for our students. Teachers had to pivot and make a large shift overnight despite their levels of comfort with technology. For many, this also meant spending more time engaging with our students and providing them feedback. Of course, that's something our teachers already did every day, but how they did it changed dramatically and suddenly seemed to mean more now than ever. Um, so, with the acknowledgement of a large shift suddenly happening and many not knowing where to turn next, governments and education systems began compiling and sharing guidelines for staff on effective remote teaching, how to communicate, and professional development. How staff received this information was also different, and how they made it applicable was different. So, leaders had to be ready to support staff in a way that they never have. So, many points of these takeaways apply to our district and to our students and teachers. As a district, we had to make education accessible to all within their homes and create as clear of guidance as possible for our students and teachers. We had to determine what resources and tools we as a district would and would not use in order to create continuity for our district and families that had multiple students. We had to create new forms of communication, especially ways to ask for help when tech issues arose, and how we would teach our staff to use those decided upon resources. But overall, everyone learned a lot, and several of these items that were implemented during the pandemic are still in play today. So for my second resource, the two key takeaways is that there's no one size fits all approach to using technology in education, which this article by Bostwick highlighted. It is, however, important to integrate technology into a classroom with a clear purpose in order to empower our students to become creators and problem solvers. The use of technology should transform a lesson, not simply substitute out traditional tasks with digital ones. We can empower our students through the use of technology and digital tools and boost their creativity, all while practicing communication and collaborative skills. If we are able to harness the tools that are relevant in our classrooms, then they are also likely to be used appropriately outside of the classroom. How we can aid in educating our students for lifelong success once they part from their academic career. Our district is considered to be one-on-one with our device of choice, which is the Chromebook. It would seem like that would make it a one-size-fits-all, but I don't really think it is. Our district ordered Chromebooks with touch screens for our primary students, since using a mouse is more difficult for them to navigate at that age. They ensure that the appropriate add-ons that Google offers are installed and usable to those that need them. However, when these are unable to meet our students' needs, we do look for alternatives for them individually in order to set them up for success and ensure access. This then in turn applies to our teachers who aid in the students' use of devices and impacts our students as they learn to use these devices to their fullest potential. Sorry. So, my third resource, the first key takeaway is the use of digital tools in the classroom, but more specifically, students using these digital tools. This video has, whoa, sorry about that. This video has a teacher that acknowledges her students' strengths and she views them as experts in those areas, knowing that oftentimes they have more knowledge than her in these areas. With that being said, the teacher learned from the students and they learned from her. Thus, the message of everyone being learners and being in it together, which is the second takeaway. For my school district, a piece of our strategic plan is that status quo is unacceptable, thus making us all lifelong learners. You have to learn and try new things in order to not be considered status quo. The pandemic pushed some teachers and students further into this than others, and although some students see themselves as experts, others don't. In correlation with this, some teachers are okay with accepting learning new things from students and others are not. However, students today are our leaders tomorrow, and so we must empower them to share their knowledge and guide them to do so in an appropriate way. So for my fourth resource, the takeaways, being thrown into a world of online learning, or rather e-learning, as this article called it, calls for students to rise up and take responsibility in many new ways for their own learning when a physical teacher wasn't present. In addition to new responsibilities, it also gives students the freedom to explore and try out new ways of learning through technology tools, peer teaching, and management of their own learning. This article also advocated for educators to acknowledge each individual student and that their learning extends beyond the traditional classroom boundaries and into their home environments. There may be diverse challenges and distractions that our students may encounter while engaging in remote learning, and this can impact their educational journey for positive or negative reasons. So our district was able to share resources with students and parents on how to stay diligent with assigned work in a remote setting, but we did not consider what this could look like for families who were also balancing working remotely and having multiple students in multiple grade levels. School administrators and teachers did the best they could by going for porch visits to help solve technological issues that students were having, but this was not sustainable due to the level of needs. Oftentimes, these families first became of concern to a teacher when work began to not get turned in and students weren't showing up for their online classes. For our students that excelled in this model, it was rare that they were able to show their newfound niches and expertise until we were all back in session together. Whew, gonna get through this. All right, for my fifth resource, this article highlighted the significance of empowering teachers through technology by adopting an integrated approach to educational technology. A lot of attention was directed towards our students at the start of the pandemic, but technology can also support our teachers by automating tasks, assisting with engagement, facilitating assessments, and creating interactive lessons and materials. The use of technology and continuous professional development can also allow teachers to enhance their skills through self-paced training modules, online courses, and real-time feedback. This is something that continues to evolve in the educational world, thus emphasizing the need for teachers to be continually learning and updating their teaching methods. Our district encourages all of this, but we don't require it. We see this occurring with continuity in a lot more of our secondary classes and our elementary classes, and in particular in our IPS classes at the high school. At our academy and our virtual school, our students have modules online which they can work at their pace. And although our staff can also participate in professional development similar to the setup, it's not something that our district offers, but rather outside sources offer. We have tried to offer an approach similar to this prior to the pandemic, but it was not successful. Perhaps now that we've all grown from growing through the pandemic and have more experience, it's a model that we should revisit and potentially try again. So for my sixth resource, use technology in education is always intended for good, but as this article points out, it does not come without its challenges. Technology is constantly changing as districts are consistently trying to keep up, which results in excessive technology adoptions. However, we often overlook the distractions, disengagement, and off-task behaviors that our students will exhibit with their newest tool. Thus, we must ensure that our classrooms actively promote learning, creativity, and exploration. Students have to be taught how to be active learners and creators with technology rather than recipients of information. Minimizing distractions and intentionally structuring lessons with will ultimately foster a positive and immersive learning environment that will equip our students for a successful future. My district is not one that I would say excessively adopts in the area of technology unless there is a specific need or if the current technology is unable to meet academic needs. When the pandemic hit, we were already on track for being one-to-one, so finding the devices was not the issue. It was ensuring that everyone had internet access. We have jumped that hurdle and are now focused on classroom needs, which tend to differ technology-wise between elementary and secondary levels. There's also a difference in the challenges between the levels. There's a greater challenge of usability at the elementary level, and teachers spend time teaching students to log in and appropriately use a device. As they progress through the elementary years, it turns to safety. At the secondary level, the challenges are more about the distractions that students easily know how to access as well as safe use. Since everyone was thrown into a world that was being driven by technology through classes, work, and even connections, it was a large shift to come back in person. And our teachers have had to shift and learn how to teach in new and innovative ways because of this. So for my seventh resource, this article highlights that interoperability in education has a role that ensures that the ever-changing educational system can collaborate and exchange information seamlessly. When there is interoperability, it simplifies the experience for teachers, students, and administrators, but it also enables efficient processes like single sign-on, automated data transfers, and personalization, which enhances the overall usability and effectiveness of technology in the district. When these things can come together and make tasks easier on our staff, and it leaves more time for improved teaching and learning. Teachers can also focus on students' social and emotional needs and support the environment for all students' needs. It allows for enhanced professional development, making it more accessible and efficient for teachers, ultimately benefiting both staff and students. Our district has single sign-on features for staff and students. The primary one we use is Google. Since this is such a common one, we also have two-factor authentication for our staff to aid in security purposes. We also have Clever for our students to log them into a lot of the apps and programs that they use on a daily or weekly basis. Teachers are able to customize these apps for their class, so that's also really helpful. We also created a district-wide frequently used favorites, like drop-down menu on our Google bars, that's managed by our tech department. That is something that's new this year, and we've had a lot of positive reviews from that. Our tech department's always looking for ways that make our jobs easier, and they do a very nice job of this. It really does show because it makes learning fluid, and you really don't realize how great these simple things are until they continually don't work. We also have the ability to share students within our SIS system, as well as several of our curriculum's online components. This is incredibly helpful for students that have like IEPs, and so they have multiple teachers that need access to the same thing. So on the eighth resource, strengths and weaknesses of public education were highlighted at the legislative level and clear through to individual classrooms. We learned that some content areas were able to adjust to remote learning and still provide engaging content, while others were much more difficult and teachers had to be very creative. It also brought to light where legislation was supportive of public education, but in many other ways, how they are not, particularly with funding. This, of course, varies state to state, but in Kansas, as people began pushing other agendas that pulled funds away from public education, allowed others to pay closer attention to what was or was not already currently happening. We also saw an increase in teachers utilizing their union in order to ensure safety when returning to the classroom, among other things. Many teachers felt that they had a voice to use, whereas before they did not. And some very positive as well as negative things occurred due to this. Hmm. The strengths and weaknesses that were highlighted in the article very much reflect what we saw in our district with our staff and students. It's certainly easier to spot what these are from an administrative viewpoint, but some of our teachers really struggled with identifying their own strengths and challenges during this time. Further, they did not seem to know how to always capitalize on their strengths or what to do about their challenges. We also certainly saw an increase in the use of our teacher union in our district. Our district office has always had a strong relationship with the leaders of our union. They're at every board meeting, they're invited to attend large decision-making meetings, and they meet with district administration monthly to discuss their needs and rise. We've always strived to find multiple ways in which staff feel they can have a valued voice in things, and this is just one of them. However, that's not to say we haven't had challenges with the union either. It's very difficult when you know there's not maybe an adequate staff member in the classroom. Granted, this rarely happens in our district, thank goodness. When it does, it's hard because you know it's negatively impacting students, relationships with families, the atmosphere and dynamic of a building. It's crazy what one person can do. So it's difficult is when our union begins to coach those staff members on how to maybe question administration versus supporting the staff member through knowing what their rights and responsibilities are through a process like that. So during the pandemic, there was a rapid transition to online or remote learning, which increased the use of technology dramatically. This caused districts to make very rapid decisions, many of which were driven by psychological reactions, such as fear, explanation, and action. These reactions continued for months at all levels. People began to question the quality of education, pedagogical principles, and guidance being provided. Technology and its purpose and use were also questioned, and this article emphasized the importance of carefully considering technological choices in education due to short and long-term consequences that can occur. This causes the need for critical reflection and analysis when it comes to the role of technology in education. We need to ensure that it's not just a quick fix that's handed out without clear definition and guidance. So as I highlighted in other areas of this presentation, our district already had some plans in motion prior to the pandemic that were put into play a little sooner than anticipated, but had already been thoroughly thought through and were adequately mapped out. What we weren't prepared for was rolling out a new plan without knowing how to or what kind of technological support would need to be provided to individuals in their homes. This is for us where quick decisions were made, but our technology department and district learned and adjusted and has continued some of these practices. We also learned that if you do not have clear expectations and guidance, people will create their own, and it's not always what you want. Staff and students will do this, and it's during times of making quick decisions that we often overlook all areas in which guidance is needed. So in the 10th and final resource, this article discussed redefining teachers as learning engineers who continually enhance their teaching methods through technology and data in order to cater to individual students' learning needs. Although teachers already take on roles like this, the pandemic brought to light that existing tools have limitations for our teachers when attempting to do this, thus creating more work for them. They need technology to assist with streamlining data collection, providing actionable insights, and to gain a better understanding of student emotions and comprehension. In order to do this, staff need intentional training and professional development. The text suggests having those who are equipped technologically integrated into professional development in order to be a direct resource to teachers who need to make decisions based on real-time student performance data. So our district uses data to drive student instructional groups. However, each building, grade level, and sometimes even classrooms within grade levels do this differently. Thus, there's no continuity across the district on how buildings are interpreting their data and driving instruction to ensure that students are getting what they need. We have frequently discussed this and how our department at the district level would drive this initiative is not large enough to have boots on the ground to ensure follow through and impact. It's an area of growth that we know we need to have a focus on. Our classroom teachers also know how to look at data, but they often don't seem to know how to let that data drive their instructional practices or to meet student needs, especially when a student is on the very high or very low end range of the data. So the future impacts, the key takeaways from all these articles will impact me as a leader. There are common themes amongst all of them, which are to make a plan, but be thorough in that plan before making a final decision. Ensure that as the plan's being carried out, to look for challenges and adjust, as well as the successes, and ensure that they continue on and evolve as needed. In order for this to happen, we need everyone to continue learning and growing, from district and building level administration to teachers and students. What and how we learn may be different for each group, but the teacher of the content may not always be the adult that's in the classroom. Could be our students. So with that, here are the references that I used while going through my resources. And I thank you for listening to my presentation.